Welcome to the Inside Scoop Live podcast, where indie authors get personal about their books, their writing, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt. Join me for some lively conversations with debut indie authors and seasoned veterans alike. It's a great place to find your next amazing read or even get inspired. So sit back and enjoy the show and let me know what you think. Hi everyone, welcome. On the show today is Lee Barckmann, author of Farewell the Dragon. Set in 1980s Beijing, the story pulls an unsuspecting English language teacher into a politically charged murder investigation. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on Lee. Lee Barckmann grew up in Barnegat, New Jersey, and had a huck-finn childhood surrounded by woods, streams, and meadows. In the 1950s, only 1,200 people lived there. Later on, he studied economics and history at the University of Kansas, then moved to Eugene, Oregon, and met his wife, Mary. He did various jobs for a time, then the two of them packed it up and went to China, where Lee taught English. After 2.5 years in China, they returned to the U.S., settled down, and had a family, where Lee spent the next 30 years in a career in the IT field, eventually retiring from IBM. During that time, he wrote intermittently, mostly on his first novel. Lee and his wife currently live outside of Portland, Oregon, where they enjoy backpacking, biking, running, and playing with their grandchildren. For more information on Lee Barckmann and his work, visit his website at barkwords.com. Well, hi, Lee. Welcome back to Inside Scoop Live.
Hi, how you doing, Sherry?
Good.
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. The last time you were on the show, it was about a year ago, and we talked about your alternative history series, the SwiftPad saga. What's been going on with you since then?
Well, mainly, I guess, through the plague, one of the things I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of running, and I've gotten fairly fit. I've been, I turned 70 this year, so I've been running in some races that have age group categories, and I've been winning them all. So
wow.
It's kind of fun. I'm actually I feel like I'm getting better, and, in other words, every month or so I can see an increase in my strength and my times over 5,000 meters. So
yeah,
that's been a lot of what I've been trying to do lately. I've got another novel I've sort of started, and I've just been coming in and out of, but recently I think I've gotten recharged on it, and so I'm moving ahead.
Yeah,
a little bit, but I'm disappointed because we have the perfect time for a writer in Oregon is in the winter because it rains and you can't really get out as much. But I pretty much frittered that away this winter.
Well, you mean just running? Because that doesn't sound like that's frittering it away.
No, the running and also I've been kind of on a regular basis taking care of my two grandkids. My oldest grandchild is only going to turn 2, so they're both very young, and we go over there once or twice a week and spend a few hours with them and helping out with the babysitting and getting to know the kids. So that's another thing too that's been doing.
Yeah, that's a workout right there too. I have a granddaughter. She's going to be 2 later this month. It's a lot of fun.
Our oldest is going to turn 2 this month too, so I guess they were born around the same time.
Oh, yeah. Right when the pandemic was starting and everyone was shutting down. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was a frightening time.
It was. It really was. No one knew what to expect at that point. So
you couldn't even get masks at that time, I remember.
Right. I remember. So today we're going to talk to you about your book, Farewell the Dragon. What is this story about?
Well, it's based on my time as a teacher in Beijing. I taught English in China for almost 3 years. The first year was in Xi'an, China, and then I got a job at the Beijing Foreign Language Institute in 1986, and I stayed there till just about 88. So it was quite an experience because this was China right in between the Cultural Revolution. It only ended a few years before that, but it was still, China was still a third world country. Mm-hmm. But they were beginning to open up, and it was really an exciting time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of sculpted a kind of a murder mystery around that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if it was kind of like a fictionalized memoir of sorts, but then I knew you added the mystery to it, so I thought, well, maybe it is fiction. But I'm looking at the cover right now, and there is a picture of a guy on it that looks a lot like you.
Yeah, that was me. That was taken at Huaqing Springs outside of Xi'an, which is where the Tang Dynasty, well, it was basically built during the Tang Dynasty around 700 AD. They still have the original baths that, but there's a very famous concubine who kind of overthrew the Tang Dynasty, and she's remembered. And anyway, her original bath is there. So it was basically it was right on the edge of the mountains and right near the terracotta sojos, which were built 1,000 years before the Tang Dynasty.
Wow.
So yeah, and that's what I'm sitting on is actually a dragon. When you ask me, was it a memoir? In a sense, I don't want to make any outrageous comparisons, but I guess I was thinking that if you take somebody like Graham Greene, who wrote a lot of stories, he basically went to Africa and lived and wrote A Burnt Out Case, and which is a fabulous novel, and also I can't remember the other Africa book right now, but basically that he probably took a lot of his experience and then incorporated a story. So that's kind of what I did, and I built it around the school where I was teaching was right near the Friendship Hotel, so that's a lot of foreigners would congregate there on the rooftop bar, which no longer exists.
Oh.
The Friendship Hotel then, but not the bar.
Oh, okay. So the whole Friendship Hotel, I was going to ask you about that. So that's a real hotel.
Oh, yeah, that's a real hotel, and it was built in the 50s, and it was, kind of when things were opening up in Beijing in the mid-'80s, and Westerners were first starting to come in, they mainly stayed around the southeast side of Beijing, over closer to the American embassy, and where all the embassies were. Mm-hmm. But the Friendship Hotel was located in the University District, which is in the northwest. But when I was there, it was mainly, a lot of teachers, but a lot of the third world ambassadors who couldn't afford to have their own embassy would live there. It was different. I mean, the Warsaw Pact people would come there, and a lot of I guess what they used to call the frontline states would come there, and there would be a lot of drinking. So it was kind of like a meeting place. At the time, the Berlin Wall had not fallen yet, so there was still a lot of I guess you'd call tension, international tension in it, and a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen with China. That really hasn't changed now. So
right, yeah. So on a personal level, what made you decide to go to China and teach? Well, it was just a time when I was kind of in the midst of things. I was in my early 30s. I think I was about 33, 34, and I had a relationship. I got divorced, and I'd left the job, and it was kind of right at a time where I was just feeling like I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. It was, yeah. But the main reason, I never would have gone if I'd not met a friend of mine. His name was Qi Xinghua. I decided to take Chinese during this whole time of kind of change for me. I took a Chinese class at the University of Oregon. It was actually done through something you don't see much anymore, but they had this thing, adult education, and it was advertised in the newspaper because I guess they didn't think anybody was going to take the class, so it was relatively inexpensive. And I'd studied history in college, but I really didn't know hardly anything about Asia. My focus was mainly on Europe and some America. Right.
So I thought taking the class, there's no way I'm ever going to learn Chinese, but, I might learn a little bit about Asia, and it was something to do because as I said, I was trying to write, and nothing really, I wasn't really satisfied with what I was writing. So anyway, the teacher that taught, he was a man almost exactly my age. And even though, we'd both been born during the Korean War, of course, on opposite sides. And we came to realize that our experiences growing up were not that different. And he became really one of my great friends of all time. He passed away in 2006 of pancreatic cancer. Really, I mean, it was just a horrible shock because he was,
Oh, wow.
But he invited me. He came over and was a teacher, and he basically ignited my interest in the language. And because I didn't think I was a particularly good language student. I had taken Spanish in high school and college, and I never really grasped it, even though I could read it okay.
Right.
But he ignited my interest in it, and I studied very hard. And so anyway, he went back, and then I took another year, and then he sent me an invitation to come and teach if I wanted to. So I had a real thing to do, and I had a real, I said yes.
Yeah.
It was just, and so I did. It was quite an adventure going over there. I really didn't have much money. In fact, I flew to Hong Kong and then went over to Canton, which is called Guangzhou, and took a 24-hour train with hard seats the whole way,
Oh my
sitting
gosh.
up on a hard thing, because I couldn't afford a sleeper or anything. But it was a good start for me because it just kind of got me in the right frame of mind for living in a place that had, squat toilets and, that had no refrigeration. So, basically the vegetables were what were put in the cellar. And, we'd have a lot of spinach and yams and things. But, I mean, it was very different. There was no supermarkets. I mean, this was really out in the back, and I just thrived. There were a lot of people, a lot of the teachers that went out there didn't do well, but I gained weight. I enjoyed the food and I enjoyed everything.
Well, it sounds, I love that story because it's an amazing opportunity, obviously. And, you just never know when things like that are going to come up. So yeah, you were at the point in your life, you could go for it and you did it. I love that story.
It was a great opportunity for me. I mean, it changed me in a lot of ways. After I got back, I was no longer scouting everything. Because I just saw so many people there that were dying for opportunities to do things, and I realized that I had every opportunity living in this country.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Now, so Nate is your protagonist. Nate Shoot, is that how you say his name? Shuit. Okay.
I think. Yeah.
So he's 35. He's an English teacher in China, I guess. So he is based on your trip to China. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how he maybe kind of tell us a little bit about how he gets into some deep water? I know you don't want to give away too much of your story, but maybe just give us a little bit of the backstory.
Sure. Well, it's the story takes place right at the end of his time there. It starts out, his girlfriend has just left him, and he discovers the bodies of two of the people that lived on his campus. One was a teacher, the other was a student. And they were in her apartment, and they were shot to death. And so he basically goes and, reports it and everything, and he begins to be interrogated by the Chinese security police. And the story is about that interrogation, and it's sort of like he knows something. He doesn't absolutely know everything, but he knows something, and he's afraid to tell the police what that is because that would implicate the people who are helping him, so it's sort of his recollections basically have the same function as a flashback. So when the cops would ask him questions, you kind of flash back to the time, how things start. And those flashbacks basically tell about his life, about what people who've read it say that, the thing that's interesting is, just the details of what life was like and how huge it was for, particularly for a Westerner to be living there at that time.
Yeah.
And then of course, then you've got the whole story of unwinding the murder mystery.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I bet it was fun to write because you were kind of probably, reminiscing and then making up fun stuff to do to your character as well.
That's pretty much it. I've recently kind of looked back at it a little bit, and I don't know. I think it might be the best. I'm hoping, every writer hopes that their next book is going to be the best. And if I can be I'm pretty proud of this book. I think it has some qualities that I'm pretty proud of. So
yeah.
It was a lot. It was fun, and it took a long time. And the thing, I guess one of the things that makes it good is it. I'm bragging, but the reason I think it is good is because I took a long time. The original pieces that I wrote, I've got at least 4 major drafts, and then lots and lots of filling in. For when it started out, it was exactly as you said, just sitting down and writing memorances, and then kind of putting it together, and then thinking through and tying real things together to things that make up.
Yeah. Now, I know Nate makes an appearance in your SwiftPad saga. Is Farewell the Dragon kind of a prequel, or is it a totally different story?
It's both.
Okay.
It is a completely different story. I didn't, when I wrote it, of course, I wasn't thinking that I was gonna do anything with Nate later. Mm-hmm. But basically, the SwiftPad story basically takes place around now, within maybe, it starts maybe 5 years ago and then takes it up to about now. But this is it's kind of a, fictional world. Well, of course, everything is fiction, but
yeah.
So yeah, I just I wanted it. He just kind of fit in the SwiftPad story, so I took him and updated him. He got older, and and just sort of extrapolated. Okay, what was his life? How because I left his fate sort of hanging at the what was eventually going to happen to him. He's still. So obviously he didn't die.
Spoiler.
And, spoiler alert. He didn't die. He just basically kind of shows up, and he's sort of he's not a main character in the SwiftPad books, but he's sort of a stirrer of the pot who kind of brings, and he's older and a little bit more jaded, and he's kind of a teacher for the younger participants in the next books.
Okay. So I have to mention Farewell the Dragon took home a gold medal in the 2021 Readerviews Literary Awards, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. As an author, do you enter many awards competitions?
I was, I did a few, and I'm to the point now where I'm really focusing. I figure I guess I've just accepted the fact that, and I mean, you're kind of in this business, and, there's, if you look on Amazon, there's a million titles, more than a million titles on it.
Right.
And it is, when everybody who starts out thinks that they're going to write The Sun Also Rises and become famous when they're 25, like Hemingway did. But that's not the usual story.
Right.
So I've decided that I'm just going to basically leave it for posterity and try to spend all. For a while there, I was saying, okay, I've got these 4 novels. I think they're pretty good. Now's the time to start promoting them, and of course, you get lots of people that want to help you promote them and things. And so I've narrowed it down. I did enter one other one. I took second. It was Red City Review, which was a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I was a finalist in that, but I didn't win it.
Yeah.
And but the Red City Review basically went defunct about 3 years ago. So.
Oh, okay.
So no,
yeah.
I guess the answer, I saved all the
yeah
the screenshots. They gave me a really nice review too. Anyway.
Oh, they did, yeah. Because I know, yeah. I feel like that's where ours is a little bit different, because we do give a full review of the book. And I know not a lot of companies do that, but well, that's interesting to know that they did that as well. So And now you've been reviewing for us too at Reader Views. And I know as an author, you know the importance of book reviews. Like you were saying, the millions of books out there, so it's especially important for the indie author. But I'm curious, what kind of motivated you to join the Reader Views review team?
Well, it's I don't read. I guess I have not read a lot of new fiction. And, I don't get motivated to do it very much, and I think that's important to do because just from a karma perspective or whatever, how could I expect anybody to read my stuff if I don't read theirs? Or if I don't read new stuff, how can I expect anybody else to read new stuff?
Right.
So it gives me an opportunity to just to look at books that are I otherwise probably wouldn't have heard of and read them and as you know, I've not in all cases, but in most cases I've been surprised. And plus the fact I think reviewing books is it's obviously a different skill than writing fiction, but it's an interesting one, and it stretches you in different ways.
Yeah.
And I do that too. I've got a website. I've got a Google page where I've done a lot of reviews that I've never published outside of my own website. But I decided to, for you, I know you get a lot more coverage on it. So.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, too. People see my reviews and see my name, and if they like the reviews, maybe they'll look and see what I write.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it gives you the opportunity, I think, to look at other people's styles and, I like the way that happens. Can I incorporate, that kind of style into my writing or, things like that. It's kind of like continuing education, I think, Yeah,
it is. It is. There's a lot of good, everybody, because writing a novel is, it takes so much out of you and you spend so much time and so much, you put everything into it and nobody tries to do it. Well, not everybody. I think some people kind of just throw it together. But I don't write, like, for example, I know one of the things you get lots and lots of emails from people giving you advice saying, okay, if you want to write a successful novel, here's the formula, And, this is what people are writing, if you want to be a romance novelist or you want to be a mystery writer, you got to hit certain formula. And I don't do that at all. And I don't, I basically say, okay, I'm going to create my own style. And I think most people, particularly beginning writers, do that. And I think, that's really the more honest way to do it. And it's also, I think, more rewarding for yourself because, writing is really about discovering yourself. That sounds like a cliche, but it really is true because, everybody in their own head has a great story to tell. But you don't really, until you actually see it and can hear it back and see it and read it back and feel it, do you really know what it is that you've got, And it also, it kind of gives kind of a clue to your own character because, we never really know ourselves.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard. Let's put it that way. Let's put it this way. It's hard to know yourself. And I think writing kind of, for better or worse, and sometimes worse, you get to see what it is that you're interested in, what it is that, how you look at things, how you see things. And sometimes it's different than what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I agree with that because I think a lot of times what we think is what we're supposed to think. And maybe if you're sitting down writing, you're just letting it happen. So you're not forcing anything. So it comes out more naturally, more authentically. Yeah.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
Well, now you mentioned earlier you were working on something new. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, yeah. What I'm working on, it's a guy who's not as old as I am, but a little bit older. And he kind of has some longings about life, some doubts about the things that have happened. And essentially, he lives on the West Coast, and things happen in his life there, both personally and professionally, that sort of drive him, to the point where he's, I have to make a change, and this is not working.
Mm.
So he takes a trip back to his hometown, which is, well, my hometown, which is like on the New Jersey shore. I grew up on, in Barnegat, and it's a small town. When my family left, there was only 1,200 people there, and I lived there for 13 years, and so I'm going back and kind of trying to. There's some things that happen, and of course, once again, I fictionalized a lot of things, but he has these vague memories of what his parents were talked about and what he saw and heard, and he suddenly has this kind of recollection that sort of hits him that he actually witnessed a horrible crime.
Oh, wow. And
he's gradually jogging his memory, and he, what he thought was just innocent at the time, now he realizes, in retrospect, now that he's older, that this might have been a horrible crime. And then as he investigates, he sees he's right. And how it ends, I don't know. But
yeah.
That's kind of what it's going.
Oh, wow. Well, that sounds interesting. So I guess you're in the middle of writing it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should be farther along. I wasted all.
You can't force these things, though, right?
That's right. Yeah, but at some point, if you're going to do it, you got to sit down and do it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, Lee, is there anything else you wanted to add today about your book, or anything else?
No, I really appreciate it. Working for Reader Views has really been an interesting thing for me. I have enjoyed almost all that I've read for you, and I look forward to reviewing more.
Yeah.
And will.
Well, Lee, thank you for joining us today and for sharing a little bit more about you and your work.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today for my interview with Lee Barckmann, author of Farewell the Dragon. For more information on Lee and his work, visit his website at barkwords.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews on InsideScoopLive.com.